Hello, everyone. This is Adam Lane Smith, attachment specialist, and I am back again with a wonderful, wonderful treat today. I'm going to be talking to Kate Wendell. She's here. Kate, say hi.
Hello.
And in just a moment, I'm going to have her tell you all about her because she is wonderful. I am so glad to have her here. We actually gel really well, Kate. You and I do on a
hmm
lot of topics, and we agree on what love is supposed to be, which is cool.
Yeah.
And there are so many people in this world who don't know what it is. So everybody, pay attention. She's not going to be covering four topics tonight. You do not want to miss any of these four. We're going to get all four of them. If you want to have a good relationship that lasts a long time, you need all four of these points in them. So, Kate, take it away. Tell us a little bit about you and why we should listen to you about relationships because it's good stuff.
So first off, Adam, thank you so much for having me. And like I was saying earlier with you before we hit record, just reaching out and connecting with me and following up to make sure that we can make this time together. So really grateful to be here and to speak to your audience. The thing that really got me to where I am right now is that I spent my 20s and my 30s single, really in this very depressed state, just in and out of relationships, dead end relationships, toxic relationships, a little bit of abuse in there. There's just certain things that when I went through relationship after relationship, every time I came back being like, how in the world am I still here? Since I was a little girl, I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to have my own family. I wanted to be married. I wanted to have the white picket fence. I was going to have 5 kids. The first one was going to be boy. It was like, I mean, I had it all figured out as a little girl. And as I got older and went through school and finished college, and I didn't get married. In fact, I was engaged at 23 to realize I said yes for the wrong reasons. And called that off. I was just like, okay, well, you know what? My Mr. Right's going to just be around the corner. And unfortunately, he wasn't. And so I kept going through this, journey of a career and finding the right people, like hoping that I would find the right person. And ultimately, it just led me down a more depressed state. And so as I got into my late 30s, I drew the line in the sand. I said, I cannot do this anymore. Something has to change. And the biggest thing that I recognized was I was the common denominator. It was me, right? So, and when I say that, it sometimes ruffles people's feathers because I'm not saying that you have to change who you are in like your true essence, how God created you, your soul, wherever you fall in that spiritual spectrum. Like, I believe that we are so uniquely created and we are all created with a purpose. And for me, that was something that I had to get to the root of. This is who I am. This is how I was created. What does Kate want that way? And then the stuff that was more on the surface could start to shift and change because I was the common denominator and I was certainly doing something that was giving me results that I didn't want.
On
And
on my channel, everyone is used to me talking about attachment, and that's exactly where attachment comes in. Is you are not to blame for what other people do, but you do attract certain people and you need to be protected and you need to take awareness of what your issues are because that's
right.
exactly what stops the cycle. Exactly. You got it,
Yeah.
Kate.
Yeah. And so that was I mean, it's not an easy process to look in the mirror and say, you got to stop doing that.
Right.
Like something's got to
Right.
change, right? Like
Right.
I'm not saying it's an easy thing, but it is very simple because when you start to focus on, okay, I am the common denominator. There are results in my life that I do not like. And I am in control of those things I say and those things I do or don't say, right? Like I'm in control of that. How can I now do this differently? Right? It's taking ownership of your life.
Right.
I was actually just talking with my husband before we jumped on this call, and we were talking about the locus of control, right? Understanding
Mm-hmm.
this what's the external, is everything external to you that's going to create your happiness, it's what's going to give you the results that you want, or is it actually an internal thing for you? And when you can start to look internally and say, okay, I get to actually figure this out. Like, I might be part of the problem, but I'm also part of the solution, and that's good news.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and so that was really just what I did. And I figured it out the hard way. I figured it out, just years of bad relationships and something that I had to learn out of each one, and kind of just doing the journey by myself. And so once I found my husband, that was something that was very common for the two of us, just being in personal development and having a growth mindset. And that was very big for both of us. So we worked together once we got married to continue that environment in our home. And that allowed us to realize, like, hey, we've got these corporate jobs. We love what, we do well for ourselves, but our passion really is around relationships. Yeah. And we really love talking about relationships. And so we, in 2020, left our corporate jobs and went off on our own to create this coaching business. And so that's what we do.
That is amazing. That is wonderful. So you are putting into practice everything you have done. It sounds like you fixed your attachment together. You bonded, you built that healthy relationship. Everything I teach everybody on my channel who comes here to hear about attachment, Kate is a living example of fixing that attachment. And here she is teaching other people now. That is wonderful, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you.
That is so darn cool. You and I had 4 topics that are in both of our wheelhouses that we excel at helping people fix. You want to go through those 4 topics and we'll bat them back and forth and see what we each think of them?
Yep. Hit them up. Cool. What's number 1?
Give me, real quick, when you work with people about communicating your expectations, what's the short and dirty of what you teach people to communicate their expectations clearly in a relationship so they actually get heard? And when you go, I'll respond and I'll give you mine too.
Okay. So mine, I come from a place of having clarity. If you don't, so most of my dating life, every breakup led me to, well, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. Right? We are really good at deciding what we don't want.
Yes.
But do you get clear about what you do want? It's easy to be like, hey, I just went through this and I don't want that again. Like, that didn't work out. That wasn't healthy. Like, that was bad. So I don't want that. But then what do you want, right? What does it look like if it's good, if it's positive, if it's loving, if it's healthy, right? What does that look like? And this is, I mean, for relationships, but this can be applied for anything in life, right? So having clarity, when you are clear about what you want, then it's easy for you to then say, okay, now I've met someone. Does this person align with what I say I want? And I teach women, I coach single women. So I teach them to what now I call non-negotiables. I get really clear about non-negotiables, like foundationally, what does that look like for a relationship? And ultimately, again, for life, right? So feelings are fleeting, physical bodies will change, looks don't last forever. You don't have to actually have like the same hobby. You can find common ground on those external sort of surface things that you might have some interest or find some balance. But foundationally, you've got to know what you want. Because like we know, if you're going to build a house, it's got to have a firm foundation. If the house is not firm, that foundation isn't firm, that house will crumble. And that is no different in a relationship. So when it comes to just expectations, I just say, look, you've got to be clear about what you want, because that's the first step in being able to communicate that to someone else.
Totally. And you and I are on the same page. And people always come in with me because I do coaching too. And they come in and they say, oh, Adam, I'm afraid to put those expectations out there because that will make people not want to date me. That will make people not like me. If I sit down and I come to the table and I say, I'm looking for a really committed relationship. And that's what I'm looking for. Is that what you're looking for? If not, cool, we'll finish dinner, we'll high five, we'll go our separate ways. But if it is, let's keep talking because that's really what I want. I tell people to do that on the first or the second date, like do that early. So you at least know you're on the right page. And they're like, oh, Adam, I don't want to be the woman who walks to the table with a list of demands and then starts telling him what to do. And he won't want that. And I say, well, who would want that? Well, guys that have the exact same expectations, guys who are tired of wasting their time, guys who have the same expectations you have, the same goals, the same interests. Make it fun. It doesn't have to be an interrogation,
Right. I was
but
going to say,
have
it's
that
not about,
conversation.
right. It's
No,
not about interrogating. It's not, and
not
I
even.
tell my ladies, like, this is about you figuring out if he is right for you, not the
That's
other
right.
way around. Right.
Exactly.
So we want to, so just be curious. Be curious. How would you talk to another girlfriend? How would you just, if you, and talk about expectations, don't go on a first date expecting that he's going to be the one. Right.
Correct.
Or she's going to be the one. Right. I know you have men listening too. So it's like, don't go in with that expectation, because you're going to most likely be disappointed. If you
Correct.
go in and just be like, I'm going to have a good time, I'm going to get to know this person, see if there's some interest, see if we, have common ground here of, again, and maybe not all of it comes out on the first date. I think you should
Sure.
know if this person should be pursued past, like, within 3 dates or a 30-day period, depending on how
Sure.
often
Yeah,
you
I
see each
like
other
that.
in person. I think you should know. And then so if you think of a fly who's caught in a room, right? And the fly is this fly is banging its body against a window like there's no tomorrow to get out. But
Yes.
just next to the window is an open door. And this open door, the fly does not see, right? Like,
Correct.
just banging and banging and banging on the window, but can't
Correct.
see the open door. And so
Yep.
if you are spending so much time and energy on all the people that might not be right, but I don't want him, I want him to like me, and I want her to like me, and you have all this energy. Same thing with dating apps, right? It's
Yep.
exhausting. Like, oh, well, maybe he's the right one, maybe he's the right one, maybe she's the right one, and you
Exactly.
have all this energy that's going out into someone that, like, foundationally is not right for you, right? You're missing the open door. You're missing
Yes.
where the right person is, because you've got so much energy. And what happens does to that fly? Typically, that fly will die.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm
Correct.
not saying that you will, but I'm just saying, like, you're
No, I hear you.
exhausting yourself, right? You're
Well,
exhausting yourself over things that, like, why do that and put yourself in this emotional stress when
yes.
wholeheartedly deep down, hey, this is what I want. And I am not going to waste my time with people who do not fit that and are aligned with that, so that I could actually put my energy towards someone who might be, and be open, and, like, I can actually see where that person is, right? I can see the open door.
I am so with you, because the same thing applies in the reverse. If you are with them and they are just fidgeting and spinning their wheels and they want to date you for 2 years before they'll commit to anything, and that's what you're signed up for. I treat so many women who are in 5-year relationships, and they say, "Well, we haven't talked about marriage yet, but I'm hoping he's getting closer to thinking about it." 5 years and you haven't? No, 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 no. You don't even know what your goals are, and he
Yeah.
hasn't brought them up. You are in a relationship with a time waster. And that's
Yeah.
one thing I tell people, because I teach attachment. That's my meat and potatoes. So people with avoidant attachment thrive on it when you don't
Yeah.
talk about expectations, when you don't set goals, when you're not clear about your expectations. The people with avoidant attachment get in there like, hey, there's zero pressure here. I can just string you along unconsciously. They're thinking, I can just string
Yeah.
you along for 3, 4, 5 years
Yeah.
until the feelings run out, and then I'll just find someone else. That's
Yeah.
really what they do. So you are at the mercy of people with avoidant attachment if you're not clear.
Yeah.
Being clear, yes, it will chase away the time wasters. It'll chase away the people that you're not right for. And I like your rule: 3 dates or 30 days. Know
30
what
days.
you're. I
Yeah,
love that.
depend. Right. And it'll vary, maybe based on circumstances and where you guys are living and what that looks like. I met my husband in California while he was living in Colorado and I was in New
Yep.
York City. And
Yep.
so we got to know each other really just from a friend basis. Like, hey,
Mhm.
we got some common ground. There was a hint of flirtiness in there, but
Yeah.
really, for the most part, we were just friends. We were
Yep.
just in common space, from business and personal development, that we just got to know each other that way. And then it ultimately led. But the thing, here's where clarity is so important, because we weren't really interested in each other. And that's actually a whole funny story in itself. But we weren't really interested in each other. But when we started talking in November, it wasn't until literally by the beginning of January, we're like, I love you. And we knew that so clearly because we had spent time getting to know each other, and that we in that time we realized how much foundationally like we were on the same page, that we're like, this actually can work. And then the physical kick really kicked in, because physically we were just like, yeah, you know, you're attractive, whatever, like no big deal. But yeah, so
I love that.
it's really, really important to have that clarity.
Totally. And that leads right into point number 2, non-negotiables in relationships. You mentioned that before. What are your top 2 or 3 non-negotiables in a relationship that you coach women to invest in and have in a relationship? What do you think are the most common ones?
Yeah. So I teach my women 5, and and these are really at the core. The first 2 that were actually the most important for me and Tanner were growth and communication. And communication, you know, it's sort of the overlying theme here of this conversation, and that is a broad topic. But there were certain things that were very specific that when it came to communicating, I was like, this is not happening, and this is how I want to be able to communicate. And the biggest one was that when there were disagreements, that we could come to the table as grown adults and have a conversation, even though it was going to be difficult, it was going to be challenging. We might not resolve it in one conversation, but we were committed to finding solution, and that we weren't going to have these screaming matches. I mean, I had so many relationships where it was screaming matches and punching walls and breaking dishes, and I mean, and then the non-talking, and you know, I mean, like, which you know is saying something in itself. So there was so much that I was like, okay, this is not what I want, and this is, and again, figure out what you want. So I was like, this is how it's going to look. And so communication was really big for me. For Tanner, it was about growth, knowing that we were going to be on a path to continually growing, improving on something, learning something. We feel like life should always be about growth. We don't ever want to be sedentary and just content, and not to the point where we're never satisfied about something, but it's like, great, you know, hey, we achieved something, like this is working for our family and our relationship. But what else can we do? What else can we explore? What else, you know, like we don't want to just be couch potatoes, you know, kind of thing. And so that was really important. And then the other 3 topics that are really big are spirituality. You know, what does faith look like? And that's big, because people will fight, you know, religion, whether it's religion or not religion, and like, it doesn't matter, but what does your spirituality look like? How do you want that to look for you as a couple? The 4th one is family. So family is also more like, are you going to have kids or not? Like that has to be a conversation. You have to get clear. Like, are you planning to have children? And then also, what does that look like from a faith perspective that you're going to teach? Tanner and I came from very different backgrounds around faith, and how we were going to match that up for each other in the relationship, but then also what that looked like for our kids. And then also family can also go to like family of origin. What does that look like about having boundaries with family of origin and maybe really close friends? And then the 5th one is finances. What does that look like? People come into relationships in debt. We didn't have the best, like we had some debt when we came into our relationship together. My husband's also divorced. And so there was a dynamic from a financial standpoint that, you know, played a factor. But we also knew that we weren't raised with great financial education, but that we were committed to financial education, and that we were going to have a healthy money mindset. And so we were committed to figuring out what that was going to look like for our family, and for the 2 of us to, you know, undo some of the bad mindsets that weren't serving us so well together. And so and if you think about divorce, most people, it's irreconcilable differences, right? And a lot of times finances are part of that. So if you're not really healthy or I should say, if you're not really wise in communicating what that looks like, what you want, you know, is he working? Is she working? You know, like just things, right? Like they're different for every person, but having that clarity again, creates non-negotiables. Like, this is foundationally what I'm not. And here's when I say non-negotiables, I'm going to clarify here. We're talking about being clear. We're not talking about being picky.
Right.
Right? Picky is when he's got to be blonde haired and he has to drive this car and he has to have this kind of job. And he can only practice his faith this way. You know, like, it's really, really specific and kind of picky. That's not helpful.
Right.
When I talk about non-negotiables as foundational, you're getting the baseline and then you're figuring out, okay, here's where I am. Like, I can't compromise. And this is at the core of who I am, but here's room for the other person, right? Here's how you make room for the other person. If you don't make room for the other person, they're gonna be like, well, cool, I'll go find someone who will make room for me.
Correct.
Right. And then they'll go away. So that's the nuts and bolts of teaching, how I teach my non-negotiables.
I love that. I love that. And the one thing I would add to that, probably is just a nitpick, I think, on your first point, is everything you just said, plus attachment, adding the attachment piece in of the way I phrase it is, can this person act with you together as a person, or is this person endlessly acting upon you and other people in their life? Are they pushing buttons? Are you going to be a video game on their phone that they're just trying to get the right responses? They're going to inflict pain, or then they're going to make you feel good, or whatever it's going to take to get you to do that. And you watch how they interact with other people in their life. Do they act with them and explain, provide context, like you said, communicate and work on that clearly as a team? Can they be a team? Or are they just going to be endlessly pushing buttons? Because if they're just pushing your buttons, that everything else you just listed just falls into the dirt, because they will just push your buttons on everything. And they will never truly work with you in your marriage. You won't have a marriage. You'll have two individuals doing their own thing who can't really work together as a team. That's what I see when divorces happen, is one of them refuses to work as a team. And that's just not, that's my biggest.
It's a control thing, like wherever, right. Whatever's going on. And I know quite a few couples who that is their dynamic. And it's really, it's sad. You know, when Tanner and I first started our business back in 2020, we actually started coaching couples before we shifted to single women. And in the coaching that we did with other couples, that was the overarching theme, was that you guys are on the same team. It's not he's right, she's wrong. It's not, his way, her way, whatever. It's, you guys are on the same team. So if you're on the same team, if you think about a football team or a baseball team, like particularly a football team, right? Where like you actually have to play together, right?
Correct.
Like, there's it's not just an individual action. It's a group action of, what are we doing together to get to the outcome that we want? And that comes back to where Tanner and I were big about growth, because we're like, okay, well, what are we doing in our life? Like, where are we going? What's the vision, right? Scripture says where there is no vision, people will perish, right? So we have to have vision for what we want for our family. We don't want to repeat the same year over and over again and have Groundhog's Day. We want, we want, newness. And if you don't have that vision, then it's just the same thing over and over and over and over again. And then you start to just nitpick and realize, like, well, I want to do this and you want to do that and blah, 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 and you start living these separate lives. But if you're on the same team, then you're like, cool, here's where we're going. What do we need to do to meet in the middle to make sure that we get to that outcome?
Exactly. I love that. That is so good. I call that, with goals and legacy focus. And I tell people, because I work with guys, and guys are very solution focused, very mission focused. So I tell them, what is the point of your marriage? And they say, what? What is the point of your marriage? What is your marriage trying to accomplish? Why did you get married? Instead of saying separate, instead of just dating, instead of whatever you were going to do, why did you get married? What are you wanting to build together? What can the two of you build together better than you could build separately? What are you looking at? What's the goal of your marriage? For some, it's legacy. For me and my wife, it's, as many kids as we can have, and then as many grandkids as they can have, and and it's looking like, 500 people kind of thing. That's our legacy that we're trying to build together in business and everything. What are you trying to achieve? Go in that direction together. Build that mission together. That's
such a great question. I'm going to steal that from you.
Go for it. No, it's a good one. All right, let's roll these last two together, because they kind of do go together. Forgiveness and healing old wounds. How do you approach that with a couple? or with a single woman heading into a relationship, how do you approach that with somebody and teach them forgiveness for their partner and healing old wounds, either that they have or that the other partner has inflicted on them?
Yeah.
Where do you go with that?
So I come from a place of m- just more simple tools
Hmm.
to start healing the body and the mind.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge believer in journaling.
Ah,
And it might actually, guys don't want to journal. That's a weird thing. That's for girls, and you have like, the high school journal with the lock
I
on it or
hear you.
something. I don't know,
I hear
like
you.
it doesn't matter, and hey, you've got maybe some other people in the household and you don't want anyone to by chance come across it. Get a locked journal. That's grown adults can have that too.
Sure.
But journaling is really powerful. And there's actually research behind how it helps you process, it helps you release just the things that you've gone through. It helps to get your thoughts out because our brain is operating in a way that wants to make sure that we are safe and that we are using as less energy as the least amount of energy as possible, right? That's
Hmm.
why like habits, you drive somewhere and you're like, oh my God, how did I even get here? Right? Because your brain just knows automatically, hey, this is the route that I take. Because it's a way to conserve energy, right? So our brains are working that way, but when we are constantly thinking about things in our mind, it's running the circle. It's running the circle, and you're playing conversations over and over again in your mind, and all these things are happening. But if you get it on paper, then, and you might have to write about it multiple times, that's fine. But the more you write it down, the more you get the thoughts out. One, it frees your mind to actually think of it in another way. It
Hmm.
frees your mind to be able to just see different perspective, get different ideas, get creative. And then you process by putting it out on paper. There's actually a therapeutic component to that.
Hmm.
And so that I'm a really big believer. I as soon as I start working with my women, I'm like, get a journal, start writing. Here are some ways to get started, right? And I help them figure out how to get started. Because that truly is something that it's just simple and it works.
Yeah. I love
So
that.
start there. And then the second thing that I also do is the like a letter of forgiveness. Scripture says, Jesus was asked, how many times should I forgive? And he said 70 times 7, right? Basically an infinite amount of times. But I learned this lesson from someone who was like, well, I just took that literally. And so I just wrote out, I, Kate Wendell, forgive myself fully and completely. I'd write it out 35 times in the morning, 35 times in the evening for 7 days, right? And like did it 70 times 7. And she was like, and I
I like that.
basically, or maybe it's someone else that you have to forgive. If it's not yourself, it's someone else. Maybe there's multiple people. And just do that exercise. Writing it out helps you to, again, go through the process in your mind, get it out. I'm releasing this energy. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself.
Hmm.
And it really will start to heal your mind and your body and physically feel better. You will feel lighter when you can let that go. And so I give them that forgiveness exercise as well. And do it as many times until you start to feel the emotional connection gone, right?
I
Like
love
you're
that.
not charged up from it. And then there's some healing in that. Yeah.
I love that. That is so powerful. That's one thing a lot of my clients and people in like my attachment community, we do are big in journaling in there because journaling is so big. You get to look back and see what you were feeling, how you
Mhm.
don't feel that anymore, and writing it down. It rips it out of your soul and it puts it on the page, and then you can think about it with a different part of your brain. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful process. Forgiving old
Yeah.
wounds and healing old wounds, healing yourself. That's wonderful. I love that,
Yeah.
Kate. It's good
And
stuff.
it's just so important. It's necessary because you don't want to take those old wounds into a new relationship. Tanner was
Correct.
very big when we first started talking. He's like, hey, I'm not going to be a part of your story of all these other guys. And I had a story, and that's another element of what I teach about just this story and identity that we kind of keep ourselves stuck in. It's like, but when you can release that and be like, okay, this is a new relationship, a new person, and not bring those old wounds to the table. Sure, there you could be cautious, like but ultimately, like this new person is not all these old people. So
Correct.
come in and free yourself from those wounds.
I love that so much. Everybody at home, thank you for listening. This was wonderful. This is attachment in practice from somebody who uses different words than I do, but is doing everything right. That's
Thank you.
wonderful, Kate. Kate, where can
Yeah.
people find you? Where can people find you after this?
You know, I'm on YouTube, Kate Wendell on YouTube, as well as on, TikTok, and Instagram is the Kate Wendell, Facebook, so just search me, you'll find me. And then you can also, I have a short little training that, is free if you want to check it out over at magneticwoman.me. And you can check out that site too.
Very cool. Thank you so much. Everybody, you know
Yeah.
me, Adam Lane Smith, attachment specialist. You can find my Discord group down in the comments below, down in the description. Jump in there if you're looking on fixing attachment. Talk to Kate if you're a single woman looking for dating advice too. There's so
Yeah.
many of us out there. Do not feel hopeless. There is so much hope in this
Yeah,
world. Fix your
there
attachment
is.
and start dating and build your love.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you,
Amen.
Kate.
Don't lose hope.
Thank you, Kate, so much for coming tonight. This was so cool.
Thank you so much, Adam.